The Neat Acoustics Motive range of speakers have been on sale for over 15 years, and the SX3 speaker has been available since 2013. So that's a serious period of time. And Neat Acoustics told me that the SX3 still sells really well as a speaker system, and I can totally see why now I've spent some time with them. They've definitely got a few tricks up their sleeve, but are they good enough to be a contender for the best Standmount speaker at their price category? Well, let's find out. If you're new here, this is speaker review number 6 from 9 different speakers that I am reviewing as part of a big Standmount speaker group mega test to try and help you find the right speaker for you, and hopefully to crown one of these speakers as the best Standmount speaker in 2021, costing under £1,300. And if that's of interest to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Up to now, I have reviewed the KEF LS50 META, the Buchardt S300 Mark II SE, the ATC SCM11, the Amphion Argon1 and the Acoustic Energy AE500. And they are 5 excellent speakers, and I will be comparing the Motive SX3 to all of them. And if you're new to Neat Acoustics, you wouldn't be alone. This is my first time reviewing any speakers from them. They are a UK-based speaker manufacturer, and they have been in business for over 20 years. And the Motive range of speakers, of which there are a few different models, including a centre speaker for home theatre duties, are designed to be elegant and compact, room-friendly speakers that still offer high performance. And the SX3 is the only Standmount speaker model in the Motive range, and Neat Acoustics say that they've designed it for use as 2-channel HiFi speakers, which is pretty obvious, but also to be used as rear channel surround speakers for home theatre duties. And they are very compact speakers, measuring only 16 centimeters wide, 20 centimeters deep, but at 325 millimeters tall. They have a slightly unusual overall look, but they are very discreet, which might be perfect for a rear channel speaker in a real world home theatre setup. And if you look at them next to, say, the KEF LS50 META, they have a similar footprint, but being taller, they look slimmer, and they make the LS50 META look a bit short and dumpy. And there's definitely nothing wrong with being a little short and dumpy. The Motive SX3 are a 2-way rear-ported speaker with a 134mm or 5 and a bit inch paper mid-bass driver. And then probably the standout feature is the 25mm or 1 inch inverted dome anodized aluminium tweeter that Neat Acoustics call their SX3 tweeter. And they say it has, a big motor and magnet structure and system, and claim a frequency response of up to 30 kilohertz, which is very high. And there is soft material surrounding the tweeter, which is quite rare. And this SX3 speaker's finish is black oak. And I think that is different to black ash because the Motive speakers all have real wood veneer finishes. And on the inside, Neat Acoustics say they use very high quality components on their crossovers that are wired directly together. There are no printed circuit boards used in the crossovers, which I found really interesting. The build quality on the SX3 is really very nice. And when you pick them up and hold them in your hands, you can feel, in a similar way to the ATC SCM11, that a lot of the weight is coming from inside the speaker, from the speaker driver assemblies, etc. But with the SX3, it feels like that weight's probably coming from the tweeter. And on the rear, I like the plate and that plate design and how that's all been finished. And I like the custom speaker cable binding posts. And there is also a very interesting declaration: manufactured in the UK. And the Neat Acoustic Motive SX3 costs £1,395. And that makes them one of the most expensive speakers in this group test, and obviously just outside of the £1,300 price budget that I set for the test. That also makes them 40% more expensive than the KEF LS50 META, the Buchardt S300 and the Acoustic Energy AE500. So that is, a fair chunk of money more. It also makes them more expensive than the Amphion Argon1 and still slightly less expensive than the ATC SCM11. Setup of the SX3 was easy, and it didn't take me long to be happy with their placement in my room for time alignment and towing. And then I measured them as part of a Dirac Live calibration, and this is how they measured in my room. And from 300 Hz to above 10 kHz, they measured extremely impressive for being smooth and linear, and on a par with the Amphion Argon1, ATC SCM11 and KEF LS50 META, which is impressive. And in fact, they are so well behaved, it doesn't really leave me much to talk about, except one thing that stood out to me, and that is the dip in the response between about 2 and 5 kHz, which I assume is through the crossover, but I couldn't find this information. That dip is really quite interesting, and I think it's one of the areas where this type of speaker design will sound quite different to a speaker like the ATC SCM11. And for sound quality and performance, I would say the SX3 sits kind of in between the Amphion Argon1 and Acoustic Energy AE500. They have the open sound of the Amphion with their light touch and that kind of speed, but they deliver their sound with a slightly softer, less carved out in stone way, with a bit more tonality like the AE500. But they don't have the bass of the AE500 or the Amphion one for that matter. It's actually the overall presentation of the SX3 and definitely their soundstage that for me was the star of the show. And as I mentioned, they sound light on their feet and nimble, and that gives nice clarity to the soundstage, and music is delivered very smoothly, very non-analytical and in a highly musical way. And I felt there was a lot of space between me, the listener, and the music events that were happening in front of me. And that doesn't happen that often in my listening room, I think because of how the room is set up and where the speakers are placed. And I think the SX3 created this sense of space within the soundstage, probably the most or probably the best of all the speakers that I've reviewed in this group test so far. So there is a lot of space in the soundstage, and music is presented with gracefulness and a real ease about it. Almost like you are listening to a tube amplifier ease about it, but obviously not quite like that. And I think this gracefulness and ease of presentation, again, the SX3 are very stand out for delivering music in this way from the other speakers in this group test. And this type of presentation might be exactly what you are looking for. Really easygoing stuff, but without losing detail and intricacy, things becoming just too warm and fluffy. Vocals are presented very clearly, and the space in the soundstage helps to give vocals space to form, and again that is very impressive and enjoyable to listen to. But I'm not sure they are quite as impressive for vocal fullness and tonality as both the ATC SCM11 or Acoustic Energy AE500, but they present their vocals more delicately than both of those speakers. And the SX3 treble is really interesting because in a way it's not very interesting, because it's just smooth and easygoing and goes about its business without drawing attention to itself. It's like the tweeter is working well within its limits and therefore behaving perfectly, and it delivers its details very smoothly. I think I would have preferred a bit more bite to the treble, listening to the speakers in my heavily acoustically treated listening room, but you have to be careful what we wish for because it's very easy to overdo it with treble, like I'm sure you've all experienced. But there is definitely not any negative traits to the metal dome tweeter. There's definitely no raspiness or harshness. I would actually say the inverted dome tweeter in the SX3 sounds more soft dome tweeter like, which could be a very good thing depending on system, room and just general preferences. And then we have the bass, and the bass from the SX3 is nice and taut and detailed and plenty fast enough for most audiophiles. And again, it's very smooth in its delivery, and I was able to squeeze more bass out of the SX3 than you might think. But really, they are a speaker that I think would benefit from a subwoofer, and compared to most of the other speakers in the group test, they sounded less substantial in their bass. But that is quite interesting, I think, in itself, because the SX3 were delivering the kind of bass output and substantialness that I expect from a small stand mount speaker. And I think what's happened is that speaker manufacturers have really been pushing small stand mount speakers to deliver more bass, to deliver extended bass, and to deliver more substantial bass. And I think that's meant that a lot of these smaller two-way stand mount speakers are now overachieving in terms of bass output and delivery. But there can sometimes be, a trade-off to that. That can sometimes come at a cost. And I think that's what stands out about the SX3. They are a speaker that know what they can do and what they can't do. And it's a speaker that definitely plays to its strengths. And the Motiv SX3 is definitely not my typical type of speaker, because I like speakers that deliver a lot of bass, and I also like speakers probably that are a little bit more direct sounding. But I've got to say, I found myself, thoroughly entertained by the SX3 speakers, and even listening to some Asterix psytrance music, which is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I was really impressed by how the SX3 was delivering that type of music. Yes, it wasn't giving me kind of pounding seismic bass, and other speakers, even in this group test, have given me that type of music with, more vividness and with a more visceral type of character. But I found myself settling in for the ride with the SX3 and just really enjoying the music for what it is and the presentation of the music for what it is. And that is the crux of the SX3 for me. In a way, it's hard to recommend them as a speaker system over, say, the LS50 META, because the METAs are cheaper, they sound more highly resolving and can deliver better bass. But they can also sound harsher and are a little bit more harder on you as an audiophile and harder on your system than the SX3 definitely are. And it's also, in a way, hard to recommend the SX3 over the ATC SCM11, because the SCM11 have a more lively treble, better tonality overall, and sound more direct. But all of those things might be bad for you and your system. And in a way, it's hard to recommend the SX3 over the Acoustic Energy AE500, because, again, they have bigger bass, more tonality, bigger overall sound, and they are significantly cheaper. But you don't get the same soundstage space and overall nimble presentation and delicacy to the sound. And this is why I think the Motiv SX3 speakers from Neat Acoustics have been selling well for all of these years, because it's one of those speakers you think you might not like until you listen to them, and then they surprise you with just how and the way they present music compared to their peers. There is a real charm about them, and it's the kind of charm that you get from those mini mighty monitor speakers like your Harbuff P3 ESRs, but costing significantly less, probably with better bass. I'm definitely not making any final decisions as of yet, because I've still got some other very interesting speakers to review and compare for this group test. And some of them I think will compare very directly and nicely to the Motiv SX3. So that's very, very interesting. So make sure you've subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.